Hey, everybody. Welcome back, or welcome to the Managing with Mind and Heart podcast. Folks, I am your host for today for this quick, short, hopefully tactical episode. My name is Ethan Nash with Nash Consulting. Folks, let's talk a little bit about email. Maybe not the sexiest of topics out there, but probably still an important one for you, and probably a source of pain for many of you out there. Email, look, it's to be clear, it's like one of the greatest communication innovations in human history, apart from being able to learn to speak to each other verbally. I mean, email's pretty amazing. It's pretty magical if you think about it. In an instant, I can write a communication and send it to somebody across the globe, and they'll receive it basically instantly. I mean, this is awesome, all right? And it is, like anything, a tool and a weapon. It's a source of pain, a source of grief, a source of frustration. Being able to communicate so quickly and rapidly comes with its downfalls. And I think we all understand that. So, anyways, today, folks, I just want to talk a little bit about some potential email best practices, email rules. And as I'm sharing some suggestions and ideas with you today, I want you to maybe consider this through a lens of what type of expectations, what types of commitments should I be creating with my team that I manage or that I'm a part of around how we use emails. I'm sure many of you can relate to this, but I mean, the use of email is kind of just the wild, wild west. I find that most groups and organizations and teams, they don't have set commitments and expectations and best practices about how they want to use email together. And so then we all come into a workplace with our own view of how email should and shouldn't be used, and it is chaos. Maybe I'm being a bit over dramatic here, but let's get into a few ideas here. So, I want you to imagine that it's your job to quote unquote fix email in your organization or on your team. Fix the email problems, the email anxiety and angst that some people might be feeling. So, your job is to fix it, and you have a magic wand, which is exciting because it's not every day that we get a magic wand, but today you do. And you're going to use that magic wand to fix email. And the idea is you get to establish the email rules, the email best practices that everybody's going to magically adopt. Now, as you think about creating these rules and these best practices, I want you to consider them through three different lenses, if you will. The first lens is whatever rule you establish, it needs to reduce conflict. Okay? And let's use the term conflict broadly here. Conflict could be conflict that comes from lack of clarity, from tone that gets misinterpreted through email. But the general idea is like, let's establish rules with our email to reduce conflict. The other thing you're trying to reduce here is reduce volume. So, whatever email rule that you're creating, it's intended to actually, once again, reduce the volume. And then the third area to look at is to reduce confusion. So, again, your email rules that you're establishing here should reduce conflict, reduce volume, and reduce confusion altogether. Because you might be able to reduce volume, of course, but increase the amount of confusion. So we have to look at these three things together: conflict, volume, confusion. With that in mind, what rules would you establish for your team related to email? In fact, consider pausing this episode for a moment here and just think about that. It was totally up to you. What would be the email commitments in your organization? Now, I'm going to give you some of my thoughts and ideas on potential practices, rules to live by with email, etc., etc. So, some do's, some don'ts. So, first off, look, don't use email to deliver hard feedback to people, to deliver negative feedback, to do behavioral correction, to address, fairly sticky interpersonal issues. In fact, we did an episode on, how you might be able to use email when giving feedback, and there are some scenarios when it might be an okay idea or even a good idea. But in general, this is where I see a lot of unnecessary, unhealthy conflict happen. Is people don't address the concerns they have with each other in face to face or over voice, and stuff gets misinterpreted. It feels like a monologue. It just isn't the best way to deliver feedback. So stop. The rule here for your team is, hey, if we got an issue with somebody or some feedback, pick up the dang phone or pull them aside and have that conversation. It's just giving each other that type of respect. All right. Another thing to consider here, and I'm sure we can all relate to this, is let's all commit to having clear subject lines in our email. Like, make it easy for the recipients of your email to know what the email is about. For example, if there's an action required, with your email, and maybe there's even a due date, maybe in the subject line, clear title, and then say, hey, action item here, submit report, end of day Friday. I can see in my subject line, because as we know, our inboxes often become our to-do lists. So that can be very helpful for people. Okay, so clear subject line. Another rule here to consider, just think about the brevity and structure of your email. I'm sure we all have people in our lives that send these kind of long novels of emails, paragraph form. Maybe you all have heard the old phrase before. I'm sorry I wrote you a long letter. I ran out of time. So, what happens here is, because of the need for speed or for whatever it might be, we're not thinking about the brevity of our email, and we put the responsibility on somebody else to read through all our thoughts and figure out what they want to get out of that and what they want to do with that. So what this means here is, write your email like you would a memo. Anybody remember memos? Yes, but write it like you would a memo. Use bullet points. Use short paragraphs. Use clear language to ensure emails are easily understood. There's some great tools to help with this. Grammarly, ChatGPT, Claude, these AI tools are awesome for this. So I can basically kind of brain dump my thoughts in an email, copy, paste it into one of these tools, ask it to make it concise and clear and in bullet point form, and it does a pretty good job at it. So brevity and structure. How about having a clear call to action? I mean, we kind of touched on this earlier, but when you're sending an email, always try to end with specific action steps, or be clear if a response or task is required here. Just be clear. If you're having to go back and forth a couple times with people to get clarity on what what needs to come, what needs to result from this email, that's a good indication that you need to be more clear and have some more calls to action in those emails. Now, let's talk about the dreaded CC on emails, or BCC. So, what does it mean if you are CC'd on an email? Work with your team to establish the expectation around this. Generally speaking, if I'm CC'd on an email, that means no response is required from me unless it's indicated. Unless it says, Ethan, can you please follow up on this, respond to this, etc. CC just means basically for my information. With this, let's avoid unnecessary CCs. I mean, we've all been in the situation where we're getting CC'd on emails and we have no clue why. We don't understand why this information is relevant for us. So I think the general principle here is think very hard about the people that actually need to be on this email. Yes, we want to communicate clearly and be generous with information, but more emails and more information isn't always better communication. So who really needs to be a part of this email? CC them, and so on and so forth. The other thing is just when we're CC'd on emails, be thinking about when we need to do the reply all. In most cases, unless it's specified, I don't think we need to do reply all. We reply to the person sending the email. Again, unless I'm being asked to reply all. Now, BCC. BCCs are helpful. As I think most of us know, if we BCC people on the email, other people receiving that email won't see who's BCC'd. So BCC is good for large groups, especially groups that you might suspect will do the reply all. So if I BCC people and they hit reply, it's not going to send it to everybody I BCC'd. BCCs are also great for protecting privacy. And again, just kind of helps limit unnecessary responses. All right, what's next to consider here? How about just watch your tone over email? Read your emails before they are sent. Now, this is a tricky one because I've been in plenty of situations before where I read an email and given my bias about this person or the situation, I interpret it as like really snippy or rude or whatever that might be, when that's totally not what they meant. So I can help out in those situations by just being careful to how I watch my tone. Please, thank yous go a long ways. Making sure I don't quote unquote shout in my emails by doing capital letters. I mean, that's really loud and kind of scary. Don't use snippy words like apparently you didn't receive my last email because I haven't received a response. Look, when stuff is done over text, it's just hard to interpret the tone. So let's be careful about how our emails read. That will help reduce conflict. Because again, we're aiming for reducing conflict, reducing volume, and reducing confusion all at the same time. Another thing to make a commitment around is clearly state who needs to respond or take action. Again, I've talked about this in a couple ways already, but avoid putting multiple people in the to line and then not making it clear who should respond and who should take action. Another rule here: avoid several streams of consciousness emails. Meaning avoid sending 5 or 6 or 7 emails, over the course of a day or 1 hour. And, that's just not helpful. Here's what you should do instead. Save them up over the course of the day. All right, if I'm a leader, I'm a manager, and I'm tempted to just send a whole bunch of different emails to the same people, I think to myself, does this need to go out right now or can it wait till the end of the day? And then I basically create a list of the notes I want to send out. Then at the end of that day or the end of that week, even if you can wait that long, I send it out all together. Now I have one email with all the things from you rather than 7 different emails over the course of that day. We did an episode a little bit back called The Magic Email. Consider listening to that one. We'll link it into the show notes. But the idea is this magic email is like, depending on the workflow of your team, a daily or weekly email in which I, as a leader, communicate all the information at once. So again, I'm saving it up rather than sprinkling it in over the course of a day, a week, etc. Okay. Here's another rule. Avoid the please read the thread approach. All right. Just the other day, I got an email from somebody that basically said, hey, read this thread. Couple issues with this. One, once I read the thread, it wasn't clear what I was supposed to do with it. Was this just for my information? Was I supposed to respond to something? Was I supposed to handle the task? It's just not clear. The other issue is I looked at this email and it's like 7 or 8 different, emails all in one thread. And it's just a lot to read. And 75% of that stuff wasn't even relevant or necessary for me to read. So we're giving each other the courtesy by, sure, forward the thread, but pull out the information they need to read from that and put it in the email and say, hey, look at this. And if you need to refer to anything, the rest of the thread is there. Now, one of the issues that I find with email, I don't think people do this kind of intentionally, per se, but we end up taking an email in our inbox, getting it out of our inbox and into somebody else's inbox. And from my perspective, I've taken care of something on my to-do list. But because I was just being expedient about it, not being clear about it, not taking the time to, figure out exactly the information that person needs to know or having a clear action, well, my task now becomes someone else's task to deal with. And then they bounce it back to me, and now it's back on my plate and my to-do list a day later. So just take the time to make sure when you're sending an email or forwarding something that when you're doing so, it has the best chance of that is the last email you have to send about that thing. Then it's not going to come back to you, and you're not going to have 4 or 5 back and forths to figure out what to do with the thing. Another thing to consider here is just, and this is related to what I just said, avoid email meetings. So these long, drawn out threads with lots of people weighing in, lots of people asking questions, lots of people responding. I don't think email is the best medium for drawn out conversations. It's not a medium for meetings. If the email back and forth is starting to get complex, pick up the phone, call a quick huddle. It's actually going to probably save you time in the long run. So emails, I think, should generally be for communication that requires 1 or maybe 2 back and forths. Look, just a few things to be thinking about here. The bottom line here is don't let email just be a free-for-all, wild, wild west. You're going to save everybody a lot of time, angst, confusion, unnecessary conflict by just sitting down with your team and having a conversation of what do we need to commit to in terms of our email best practices. And look, this doesn't need to be something that you as a leader just say, here's what we're going to do. Everybody get on board with it. In fact, this is probably one of those great opportunities that doesn't always come up a lot to do something like building a consensus around email. And from my experience, it's actually pretty easy for people to come to a consensus about email best practices. So here's your action item. Next meeting with the team, spend all of 15 minutes maybe, brainstorm all the best practices, come to a consensus, build a document of your email commitments, and now everybody's on the same page with it. Now it's much easier to manage it at that point because we sat there in a room together and built commitments about how we're going to use email. So when somebody does maybe misuse the CC or the reply all or stream of consciousness email or sending 5 or 6 or 7 emails to the same person over the course of a couple hours, we can just circle back to the commitments. Hey, I just want to remind us of these commitments we made. Let's try to get back on track with that. All right, that's all I got for you today. Hope this is helpful. Oh, and by the way, before I leave, the best way you can support us at this point is leaving us a review. Go on your phone where you listen to podcasts, open the Spotify app, leave us a quick review. That helps other people find the show. Thank you very much. Until next time.